Wheel of randomness, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the 15 minutes that we shall learn. Welcome to Randomly 15 Minutes, where we give you a topic in 15 minutes or less, or your podcast is free. I'm your writer, Sam Rossi, and shortly Megan Klodnicki will be reading a script written by me on a topic she may or may not know about. This shall be fun.
Hear ye, hear ye. Richard I of England is up next for knighthood on Randomly 15 Minutes. And I'm your host, Megan Klodnicki. Let's see what Sam has written for me on merry old England. Oh, this is going to be a little bit of a long one, everyone, so bear with me. Richard the Lionheart was a renowned knight of his time. Born the third of 5 sons, he wasn't meant to be much. Well, that's great to start off with. His parents, Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine, his 2 older brothers, died before their father. Okay. Born on September 8th, 1157, at Beaumont Palace in Oxford, England, his 3 older siblings were William, who died before Richard's birth, Henry, the young king, and Matilda. 4 more children were born after him: Geoffrey, Eleanor, Joan, and John. Richard most likely spoke French and Occitan?
Both sound right.
Okay, and this is an old Romance language. He would spend his childhood in England. Before his dukedom, he lived most of his life in the Duchy of Aquitaine in the southwest of France. I am sorry for that. You know how I am with speaking here. It is not known if he even spoke English, even though he spent 8 years in England. Well, that's interesting. In 1170, Henry II fell ill and divided his lands in 2/3. Young Henry was made heir apparent for the throne of England in June 1170. Richard was given Aquitaine at the request of his mother, and the 2 went to Aquitaine in 1171. Geoffrey was made Duke of Brittany through marriage. At 14, in June 1172, Richard became Duke of Aquitaine and Count of Pitot, an area in Aquitaine. According to Ralph of Coggeshall, a monk chronicler, Henry the young king instigated rebellion against Henry II. He wanted to reign independently over at least part of the territory his father had promised him, and to break away from his dependence on Henry II, who controlled the purse strings. Henry the young king abandoned his father and left for the French court, seeking the protection of Louis the Seventh. Louis VII. His brothers Richard and Geoffrey soon followed him, while the 5-year-old John remained in England. Louis gave his support to the 3 brothers and even knighted Richard, tying them together through vassalage. The brothers promised to not make peace without the French king and barons' permission. The brothers raised troops to their cause of overthrowing their father, likely with their mother's backing. In the meantime, Henry II raised his own mercenary armies and would capture his wife, his sons' wives, or fiancés before winning the war. The brothers did not get what they wanted and had to go to their father with their tails between their legs. Just saying. They were offered a peace offering in the beginning of the war, but the brothers declined it because of the French. The final peace deal was less than a half of what was originally offered. Until his death, his sons were not given any type of resources that could be used against him. He kept his wife under his control and probably took Richard's fiancée as a mistress. However, nothing came from it. After his failure to overthrow his father, Richard concentrated on putting down internal revolts by the nobles of Aquitaine, especially in the territory of Gascony. The increasing cruelty of his rule led to a major revolt there in 1179. Hoping to dethrone Richard, the rebels sought the help of his brothers Henry and Geoffrey. The turning point came in the Charente Valley, in the spring of 1179. The well-defended fortress of Taibug seemed impregnable. The castle was surrounded by a cliff on 3 sides and a town on the 4th side with a 3-layer wall. Richard first destroyed and looted the farms and lands surrounding the fortress, leaving its defenders no reinforcements or lines of retreat. After Richard had subdued his rebellious barons, he again challenged his father. From 1180 to 1183, the tension between Henry and Richard grew, as King Henry commanded Richard to pay homage to Henry the young king, but Richard refused. Finally, in 1183, Henry the young king and Geoffrey, Duke of Brittany, invaded Aquitaine in an attempt to subdue Richard. Richard's barons joined in the fray and turned against their duke. However, Richard and his armies succeeded in holding back the invading armies, and they executed any prisoners. The conflict paused briefly in June 1183 when the young king died. With the death of Henry the young king, Richard became the eldest surviving son and therefore heir to the English crown. King Henry demanded that Richard give up Aquitaine, which he planned to give to his youngest son John as his inheritance. Richard refused, and conflict continued between them. This refusal is what finally made Henry II bring Queen Eleanor out of prison. He sent her to Aquitaine and demanded that Richard give up his lands to his mother, who would once again rule over those lands. On July 4th, 1189, the forces of Richard and Philip defeated Henry's army at Balance. Henry agreed to name Richard his heir apparent. 2 days later, Henry died in Chinon, and Richard succeeded him as King of England, Duke of Normandy, and Count of Anjou. Richard I was officially invested as Duke of Normandy on July 20th, 1189, and crowned king in Westminster Abbey on September 3rd, 1189. Tradition barred all Jews and women from the investiture, but some Jewish leaders arrived to present gifts for the new king. The Jewish leaders were flogged and dismissed. Rumors were that there was an order all Jews killed, and the people of London took to the streets to kill Jews. Many Jewish homes were destroyed by arsonists, and several Jews were forcibly converted. Richard would have the perpetrators punished. However, that did not quell the masses. Offended that he was not being obeyed, and aware that the attacks could destabilize his realm on the eve of his departure on crusade, Richard ordered the execution of those responsible for the most heinous murders and persecutions, including rioters who had accidentally burned down Christian homes. He distributed a royal writ demanding that the Jews be left alone. The edict was only loosely enforced, however, and the following March further violence occurred, including a massacre at York. Richard had already taken the cross as Count of Poitou in 1187. His father and Philip II had done so at Gisors on January 21, 1188, after receiving news of the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin. After Richard became king, he and Philip agreed to go on the Third Crusade, since each feared that during his absence the other might usurp his territories. After raising funds to have his crusade, long story short, he sold titles and raised taxes. In fortifying his French strongholds, he set off in the summer of 1190. He appointed as regents Hugh de Poucet, Bishop of Durham, and William de Mandeville, 3rd Earl of Essex, who soon died and was replaced by William Longchamp. Richard's brother, John, was not satisfied by this decision and started scheming against William Longchamp. When Richard was raising funds for his crusade, he said to have declared, "I would have sold London if I could find a buyer." In September 1190, Richard and Philip arrived in Sicily. After the death of King William II of Sicily in 1189, his cousin Tancred had seized power. Although the legal heir was William's Aunt Constance, wife of Henry the Sixth. Yeah. Holy Roman. Okay, let me read that sentence over again. There's so much going on in this. Seized power. Although the legal heir was William's Aunt Constance, wife of Henry VII, Holy Roman Emperor. Tancred had imprisoned William's widow, Queen Joan, who was Richard's sister, and did not give her the money she had inherited in William's will. Long story short, too late. Richard occupied Sicily after his wishes were not followed. In the end, he won out and his sister was released, and a treaty was signed that she would receive her inheritance, and Richard named his nephew, Arthur, son of Geoffrey, as his heir and would marry one of Tancred's daughter. Philip began to plot against Richard with Tancred. The two kings would clear the air and end their tie through the engagement of Richard to Philip's sister. In 1190, King Richard, before leaving for the Holy Land for the Crusade, met Joachim of Fior, who spoke to him of a prophecy contained in the Book of Revelation. Richard had captured the island of Cyprus after many of the survivors of a storm were captured. He later sold the island to the master of Knights Templar, Robert de Sablé, and it was subsequently acquired in 1192 by Guy of Lusignan and became a stable feudal kingdom. The rapid conquest of the island by Richard was of strategic importance. The island occupies a key strategic position on the maritime lanes to the Holy Land, whose occupation by the Christians could not continue without support from the sea. Cyprus remained a Christian stronghold until the Ottoman invasion in 1570. So he crusaded. He got captured by the Germans at some point, went to war with France, and died. On March 26, 1199, Richard was hit in the shoulder by a crossbow bolt, and the wound turned gangrenous. Richard asked to have the crossbowman brought before him. Sources are not the same, but some say it was a young boy who was taking revenge on the king for killing of his family. Richard died on April 6, 1199, in the arms of his mother, and thus ended his earthly day. Because of the nature of his death, it was later said that the lion by the ant was slain. Richard produced no legitimate heirs and acknowledged only one illegitimate son, Philip of Cognac. He was succeeded by his brother John as king. His French territories, with the exception of Rouen, initially rejected John as a successor, preferring his nephew Arthur. The lack of any direct heirs from Richard was the first step in the dissolution of the Angevin Empire, the empire that included parts of France and majority of the British Isles. Sometime around the 16th century, tales of Robin Hood started to mention him as a contemporary and supporter of King Richard the Lionheart, Robin being driven to outlawry during the misrule of Richard's evil brother John, while Richard was away at the Third Crusade. Wow. Talk about family drama right there.
You know, you give them an inch and they suddenly think that they can rule a country.
My goodness. I don't even know where to start with this. All I'm going to say is if you thought you had family drama, I don't know now.
Let's overthrow Dad.
Like, and then it got confusing with King Henry and then King Henry's son and this, like, and Richard and my goodness, I don't know what else to say except that the 1100s had a lot going on over there.
Oh yeah.
And then with the whole Crusades, I had no idea about any of that stuff. I was like, oh, okay, now we're moving into this. It was just like an action-packed, never-ending, stopping thing.
It did. It was weird.
Like, yeah. At first, it was funny because when I read his sister Joan, I'm like, oh, tell me she's Joan of Arc.
No.
That would have been great.
Joan of Arc was in the...
I don't even know.
1600?
Let's see. She was in France, though.
She was in France. And she was
Joan
a
of...
French woman. Because the joke is the only way the French could prosper is if they were in charge by somebody that wasn't French or a woman.
Huh. Okay, she was way after that time. It says she died in 1431.
14.
So, yeah.
That was close. I went over.
No, she was under Charles the Seventh of France during the 100 Years' War, so
Yeah.
quite a few years after.
I think she was knighted, so we'll check it out at some point.
Yeah. But,
She comes with a knight. Well, she does in my book.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, my goodness, between England and France, and I can't even imagine, like, the borders back then. Like, things are so different nowadays.
It's so weird, because it's only certain parts of the coastline like this broken up. But they also had it where cities were, city-states.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Syracuse would have been a city-state, where Rome is just a town.
That's true.
Just because we're the second in area for the entire state means nothing. Nor does it mean when we're smack dab in the middle of the fucking state.
Yeah, that's true. I know you can't get any more middle than Central New York. That's why it's Central New York.
Yeah. No, you can't get any more central than smack dab in the middle of the city. I think it's a park marker.
Mm.
I think I saw it at doing Pokemon Go.
Huh. And there you go. You can learn things from Pokemon Go.
Yeah. They like to take the historical landmarkers and make them a Pokestop. And then you spin the Pokemon. Anything about Richard the Lionheart?
No, just all I thought reading was just drama, family drama, and people don't change. There's always going to be drama, even in the 1100s.
This is true.
Just don't have your family members start any crusades or going after you and everything like that.
This is very true.
But that's it. I'm Richard.
I'm Sam Rossi.
I'm Megan Klodnicki.
Later, y'all.